Hi folks, welcome to this video on attitudes in sport, so part of the A2 PE course. This is, one of those potential longer answer questions, essay topics it has been in the past. So attitudes in sport then. First thing you should always do is give a definition of an attitude. So common definition, of an attitude is a set of feelings and beliefs towards someone or something, and it's the feelings and the beliefs that are the key part of the definition. You might have attitudes towards certain opponents, certain venues, certain skills. There's certain roles that you play. You might be asked to play in one position, you've got a good attitude towards it. Might be asked to play in another position and you don't like it as much because you've had bad experiences there in the past or good experiences there in the past. So that's a basic definition of an attitude. Why have I got a picture of a black cab up here? Well, there's a question, what are the components of an attitude? And I always remember it through CAB, C-A-B, okay? And that's what we're just going to have a quick look at now, so I'll just write it down. What makes up an attitude? C stands for cognitive. And that is basically knowledge. What you know impacts on your attitude, okay? A stands for effective. And that are your feelings and emotions. So cognitive is knowledge, what you know. Affective is feelings and emotions, how you feel. B is behavioural. And that is basically what you do. So, what is a big problem in many societies is obesity, people not doing enough physical activity. So too many people have a negative attitude towards regular physical activity. So what we're basically saying there is they probably don't know all the health benefits of a healthy lifestyle. Okay, they probably don't enjoy doing physical activity. They therefore don't attend regular training. Therefore, overall, they have a negative attitude towards physical activity. In contrast to that, someone who regularly takes part in sport and exercise, they know the benefits, the health benefits, they enjoy their training sessions and they regularly attend. So they display a positive attitude towards health and fitness and exercise and activity. So if you ever ask for what makes up an attitude or what are the components of an attitude, it's these three things. It's also sometimes called the triadic model. As there are obviously three things that make it up: cognitive, affective and behavioural. Now just quickly move that up because there's sometimes a question that comes up, our good old-fashioned discuss question, i.e. giving arguments for and against. Okay, so the discuss question that sometimes goes up is, can we predict behaviour? So in the question it'll mention attitudes and it'll say, can we predict your behaviour? I.e., can I predict that you're going to go to training tonight? Now you're either going to go or you're not going to go. Can I predict either way? Can I predict that you will go? Can I predict that you will not go? Now because it's a discuss question, I've got to say yes I can and no I can't. Now because it's saying behaviour, okay, that is the B of the triadic model. So that's the B taken care of. So what I've got to mention are the other two, the cognitive and the affective. So the cognitive, as we've said, is what you know, it's knowledge. The affective, as we've put, how you feel, your feelings. Now what do we know about knowledge? It is relatively consistent. I wouldn't say it's fixed because we learn things all the time. Hopefully you're learning things from this video. Probably not, but here's to hoping. Cognitive, knowledge, what you know. If I know that you know that it's important to attend training, then I can predict that you are probably going to be there. If I know that you are not bothered about training and you're not really into it, you don't view it as being important, then I can also predict that you're probably not going to attend training. So cognitive knowledge allows me to predict to a certain extent. Why? Because knowledge is relatively consistent. Okay? Affective, your feelings and emotions, that makes me less likely to predict. Because your feelings and emotions are inconsistent. You might know that training is very, very important this week because you've got a big game or a big competition coming up at the weekend, but you get up in the morning, it's cold, it's dark, it's raining, and you just look outside and you think, I don't fancy it. So your feelings and emotions have changed very, very quickly. You still know that training is important, but you just can't be bothered. So because knowledge is relatively consistent, that makes it more likely that we can predict your attitude towards something. But because you're effective, your feelings and emotions can change minute by minute, second by second, day by day, that makes it less likely that we can predict what you're going to do or predict your attitude towards someone or something. So that's all things to do with attitude and what makes one up. The classic follow-up to it is, how do you change an attitude? How do you turn a negative attitude into a positive attitude? So that's what we'll look at now. Now, there are two well-known psychological theories on how we change attitudes: persuasive communication and cognitive dissonance. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at each one. Now, you're probably trying to make 4 points on each one in order to show your understanding. So they can sometimes ask you to name them and then explain how these two strategies work in changing an attitude. So the 4 key things surrounding persuasive communication. The key thing is, it is just a verbal instruction that this performer needs to change their attitude. You are not displaying the correct attitude. Now, the reason it's called persuasive communication is just telling someone is just communication. It's not persuasive. What makes it persuasive is when that message comes from someone who is respected by the person, a role model, an idol, their coach, someone who they admire and respect. When someone tells you that who you respect, that your attitude needs to change, you are more likely to listen. The message must be clear and understood. There's no point in giving them the Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment, just shouting at it all the time, because that's all emotion and no logic. Equally, it's no point being all logic and no emotion, because you're just telling them what to do without really showing them why it's important. You need a bit of emotion, but you need some logic in there as well. So the message has got to be well balanced. It's got to be clear and understood. And linked in with that, the timing of the message has got to be important. Okay? Just locking someone in the changing rooms for an hour, 2 hours after a game while you rant at them, chances are they're not going to be listening after a while to what you're saying. They're just going to be thinking, let me out of here, I've had enough. So it might be worth, warning the players that you're in the training ground tomorrow and I'm having a serious word with all of you, and let them go home. And then give it to them they've got fresh eyes, fresh ears the next morning when they're a little bit more receptive and they're switched on because they know they've got to receive an important message. So they're the things that make persuasive communication. That's one way that we can change an attitude. So cognitive dissonance then. This is a bit of a weird one. A lot of people don't believe it, but you've just got to look at aspects of our life. Cognitive dissonance occurs when two conflicting or contrasting things are taking place in our life. Prime example is someone who's trying to lose weight but eats loads of junk food and doesn't exercise. So one thing, I want to lose weight. Second thing, I'm not exercising or eating right. Okay? Or I want to get fit and healthy and be able to run further in games, and I like smoking. Those two things are conflicting and contrasting. And, smoking is a prime example. Everyone knows that it causes cancer and it cuts your life short, yet millions of people do it. So there's a prime example of cognitive dissonance. So how can we use it? What are we going to do in order to change an attitude? Well, as I said, it's when two conflicting things occur in the performer's lifestyle. What are you going to do as the coach? You're going to, say it creates, but it's already created. The two conflicting things are already there. You're going to highlight the conflict. You're going to say, look, you're saying to me that you want to play first team cricket, but you're not turning up for every training session. I can't pick you for the first team if you're not turning up for every training session. So what you're doing is you're educating the performer. It's going back to CAB again, cognitive, affective and behavioural. You're educating them, you're giving them new knowledge. If you turn up for every training session, you will be eligible for the first team. If you don't, you won't be eligible. Okay? The coach can then create a fun training session. So effective, the feelings and emotions are now better towards training. And then as the performer starts to turn up, i.e. their behaviour is to turn up to sessions, you praise it, you reward it, you reinforce it. Well done, great to see you. Turned up again, excellent. This is what we want to see. So it's those kind of things that are going to change an attitude of a performer. So the two key strategies are persuasive communication and cognitive dissonance. Finally then, how do we measure attitudes? Well, if you've watched the video on personality, it's exactly the same there. Anything to do with psychology, there are three key ways we can measure anything. Personality, arousal, anxiety, attitude, aggression. There's three key strategies. So there they are, questionnaires, observations, physiological data. Now again, you might, discuss how effective these methods are. Think about some of the things that we've said in terms of the personality stuff we looked at. What the good thing about questionnaires, they are quick. They can be self-administered, i.e. you can get the person to fill them in themselves. Okay? They can be repeated. You can do a questionnaire each week and see if things are changing. However, there's a few doubts. So there, plus points about questionnaires. But there are then downsides. There's the old issue of social desirability, i.e. giving answers that you think you should give, as opposed to how you actually feel. Okay? There's the issue of misunderstanding the questions. Okay? And the issue with the questionnaire is the questions might be vague. Okay? Can you really get to the root cause of your attitude problems or issues with yes/no answer questions? Probably not. Okay? So there's an issue there. Like I said, we've also got observations. Whoops, I'll just quickly get rid of that. I'll just move observations down a little bit. Okay, so in terms of observations, okay, we can get a greater depth by observing you than just by doing questionnaires. We get to see your attitude in the sports setting, so in the actual sporting environment. That's what we get to see as well. So these are big selling points there. Less likely to be biased if someone's observing you. You're not the one filling in a questionnaire this time, someone's watching you. But again, we have issues in terms of observations. They are very time consuming. And there's also the issue that the performer may, if they know they are being observed, modify their behaviour. So there's an issue as well. Okay, finally then, with regards physiological data, there's certain pros and cons with gathering physiological data to measure an attitude. Okay, what can we do with data? We can chart, plot, compare, etc, etc. It's always great. The other thing about data is it is objective. It doesn't lie, it doesn't mislead, it is what it is. So they're two big selling points on the physiological data in order to measure an attitude. But the key downside is the reliability of this data. Is your heart rate elevated because you are displaying a good or a bad attitude, or because you are warmed up for your event? Is your blood pressure high because you are displaying a negative attitude and you're worried, or because you've thoroughly warmed up again? There are reasons why things elevate and decrease in your body, but can we say exactly what those reasons are with 100% confidence? No, we can't. So there's always an issue surrounding that. Okay, hope you found this video useful, folks.